Okay, I went back and forth on whether or not to get into this Snake Eyes film as it relates to the Charlie Kirk assassination, mainly because it's obviously a part of the ritual that's going on right now. And I feel like by even discussing it, saying the term Snake Eyes, engaging with the idea in any way, I'm somehow powering the illusion. I'm contributing to the ritual. All you have to do is look around a little bit on the internet and you can see that everybody is talking about this, including the usual suspect shills that are promoting disinformation, but yet they're allowed to cover this. And those are things you always have to be considering, like, is it a good idea for me to cover the same thing if that is going on? And ultimately with something like this, I think it's a good idea to at least have one examination of it that is credible out there. Sure, the rest of the noise will drown it out, right? It won't gain any traction, but hey, at least it's out there. And as I got into it more, I could not believe what I was uncovering about the whole thing. This is one of the most blatant examples of subconscious sorcery that I have ever seen. And that makes it even more fascinating because I had never watched this movie before. I wasn't even aware of it. And it was sort of intentionally brought to the surface. And that raises a whole nother set of questions. And I've got into that kind of analysis before and touched on why they are intentionally doing this, because it all relates to the fake conspiracy culture that is serving a bunch of other purposes. It was designed into this whole thing from the beginning, and that's why some of these things that are true are still promoted by people who are intentionally lying to you and trying to mislead you into this false, fake awakening that's going on. Anyway, enough of that disclaimer, but I had to put that in there. Snake Eyes was released August 7th, 1998, the same day as the August 7th to 8th penumbral lunar eclipse, and the same day as the U.S. Embassy East African bombings that killed 224 people. The bombings were attributed to Al-Qaeda, just like the original World Trade Center bombing and 9/11. Now, we know that it wasn't Al-Qaeda that did 9/11, right? I mean, that much is obvious. So the fact that this bombing was attributed to them raises a lot of questions just right away. Was it actually Al-Qaeda that came up with this idea to bomb these embassies? Especially in the context of the fact that there was a lunar eclipse going on this day, and they released Snake Eyes, the film, at the same time. Are we dealing with a ritual here, where human beings were sacrificed to power this ritual magic, knowing what the film Snake Eyes would relate to in the future? And it will become obvious that was known as we go through the film in relationship to the assassination of Charlie Kirk. And people are really going to struggle with this one because Charlie Kirk was 5 years old when this film came out. Most people are going to want to lean towards coincidence on this one for that reason alone. It really helps to understand Donald Trump's role in all of this, because when you understand his role, you understand the fact that they planned his character arc out from his birth, his literal birthday. They knew what he was going to become. And it was scripted into his character. Born under a total lunar eclipse blood moon. So you have this film released on August 7th, 1998, the same day as a lunar eclipse and a sacrifice of human beings, a bombing, a terrorist event, quote unquote. Then Charlie Kirk's funeral is held in Glendale, Arizona, which is in Phoenix, at State Farm Stadium. The funeral is held on September 21st, 2025, the same day as a partial solar eclipse. We have this coincidence that the funeral was whipped together really fast. No autopsy done on the body. They just got it all settled and ready to go. They had this funeral with all of these people in attendance, this whole ritual extraction of energy that took place. It reminded me of the Travis Scott concert and all the imagery that surrounded that was very clearly a dark ritual designed to harvest energy in a similar way. And people were killed at that event as well for similar purposes. When I watched clips and just saw the imagery on websites from stories that were reporting about it, it had that vibe to it. This is a very dark ritual taking place. But of course, it was filled with boomers and people who think they're making America great again. And it had the veneer of something that wasn't like the Travis Scott concert, right? These degenerate young people who are partying and doing drugs and the whole thing, right? These are classy, distinguished, rich, retired individuals, for the most part. But I don't know. They say Charlie Kirk had pull among young conservatives, so maybe there were some younger people there as well. I didn't pay that much attention. I just saw what it was, and I'm like, not gonna watch that at all. Some clips, maybe. I'll watch a minute clip of it, but I am not tuning into this thing. But this is where it gets really insane. I can't believe this. State Farm Stadium was intentionally designed to look like a snake coiled around a cactus. This is an image of State Farm Stadium. This is where Charlie Kirk's funeral, vigil, celebration of life, whatever they called it, was held. It was held in a snake. Like, what? It was held in a snake. And if you're just tuning into all this now and you don't know the backstory on Snake Eyes, I'm going to get to that, of course, but just so you're aware, the character that is assassinated in that film is named Charles Kirkland, Charlie Kirk, right? Assassinated in the neck in the almost identical way that Charlie Kirk was killed. The film Snake Eyes is depicting this assassination 27 years before it took place, when Charlie Kirk was 5 years old, and then his funeral is held in a stadium that was designed to look like a snake. That just blew me away. I mean, seeing that, you cannot deny that we're dealing with an intentional ritual. I mean, there is no arguing with the point. This was clearly planned in advance. They had this all ready to go. That's why none of the stuff makes sense about the body and everything that was involved with how they handled that situation. It's like, we already know what we're doing with this whole thing. It's happening on the day of this partial solar eclipse in this stadium. This was planned many, many decades ago. I mentioned this in a recent video as well, that on September 25th, 4 days after the funeral, the Cardinals hosted the Seahawks. And you have this connection to Seattle and Oz and the Space Needle, because Seattle is known as the Emerald City, right? The land of Oz. But I neglected to mention that the first touchdown of the game was scored by A.J. Barner, who wears number 88. So they have this imagery of him walking into this sunrise imagery in the end zone in Phoenix, tying in the whole Donald Trump 88 Back to the Future angle. The analemmas, the sun and the moon, the eclipse, the moonchild, the great American eclipse, the whole thing. Donnie Darko. Dark-O, the eclipse. 9/11. He's the twin. His two terms are those two towers in the controlled demolition of the United States of America. And this is the turning point. This is when the towers are in the process of being destroyed, right? They were on fire, billowing smoke, and now comes the turning point when they are destroyed intentionally through his two terms. I actually have that up here so you guys can see it, because I also wanted to note the title that the NFL's official YouTube channel gave to this touchdown. Darnold dimes up A.J. Barner on TD strike. What's a dime? It's 10 cents. What was the TD called? A strike. You have the strike in the context of the dime, or the September 10th assassination of Charlie Kirk. You see? The dime strike, the strike on the 10th. And in the context of that, you have this touchdown to A.J. Barner wearing number 88. There you go. Celebrating as he enters into this end zone that's painted like a sun rising, the phoenix rising from the ashes. In the stadium where Charlie Kirk's funeral was held, that's an actual snake. Like, come on. Come on. This stuff is absurd at this point. Joel Fabiani, the actor who played Charles Kirkland, was 88 years old when Kirk was assassinated. Brian De Palma, the director of Snake Eyes, was born on September 11th. In the film Snake Eyes, Charles Kirkland is assassinated with a shot to the neck. The Atlantic City executioner, Lincoln Tyler, is the patsy. He is given this association with Lincoln, right, a president that was assassinated. But in the context of the plot, he's just the boxer who takes a dive so the whole thing can transpire. He didn't know that anybody was going to be killed. And that's the classic archetypal patsy. You know, they're involved, they're radicalized by clandestine forces to be involved in the event, but they don't have the full picture of what's going to happen. And of course, as they tell us in the news, Charlie Kirk was assassinated by Tyler Robinson. He's the patsy executioner. Allegedly, some scenes were filmed at what was formerly Trump's Taj Mahal Hotel and Casino. You have all of this taking place in a building that looks very similar to something that Donald Trump was involved in because it was his. They filmed some of these scenes there. And then that ties him into the ritual that was this film. Because, of course, he is the centerpiece of the whole thing. The opening scene is set during a storm, and the first thing I thought of as the thunder hit when the credits started to open the movie was, oh my gosh, the storm comment from Donald Trump. And for those of you who aren't aware of that, I'll play it real quick.
Leaders and their spouses Thursday night.
You guys know what this represents? Tell us, sir. Maybe it's the calm before the storm. What's the storm? Could be the calm before the storm. What storm is it? You'll find out.
He says that like an absolute gangster. You'll find out. But yeah, so this film actually is taking place during a storm. And now we have all this added context of this storm, quote unquote, that is this massively impactful assassination in the United States of America as it relates to the turning point of the country itself. Is that what he's referring to? It's probably more abstract and metaphorical than just an actual assassination, but surely that's a layer to it. The September 19th boxing match is taking place at Powell's Millennium Hotel and Casino at 10 p.m. This is obvious subconscious encoding of September 10th in the context of 9/11/2001. That is, it's the Millennium Hilton or Monolith Hotel at Ground Zero on September 11th, 2001. This film was made in 1998. Okay? This Charlie Kirk ritual sacrifice is an integral aspect of the larger 9/11 COVID-19 ritual that Donald Trump is the centerpiece of. So, of course, there's this storm going on, and it's taking place in the Millennium Hotel. Okay? Do you see how they blatantly put that in there for you? And then there's just the name itself, Snake Eyes and Twin Towers. For those of you who have not seen pictures of the Twin Towers when they existed from above, you can see that the one tower very literally resembles a snake eye, a dice that has the one on it from above. And then this one, not as blatant as the one you're looking at here, but it has the kind of needle sticking up from the top that gives you a little similar imagery. I have another picture down here. Let's see. Yeah, that's a better look at it, where you can see the blatant snake eye here if you view it as a rolled dice that came up as a 1, and then you have the needle or the antenna. I suppose that's what that is. I can't help but think of needle now based on what they did with the new one and how it looks like the COVID-19 syringe. But anyway, that's probably an antenna of some sort, and it's in the spot where the other snake eye would be. If you just remove that from your line of sight. You can just imagine this is two rolled over ones. So snake eyes as a term has relevance to the actual World Trade Center as it existed when it was the Twin Towers. Right away then, do you understand how it's the film Snake Eyes and it's taking place in the Millennium Hotel? Okay, this couldn't be a more blatant 9/11 encoded movie. I mean, I suppose Back to the Future is just as blatant, and Donnie Darko as well. We can just add this one to the list. It gets better though. The World Trade Center Oculus installed an art piece in the shape of a snake in 2025 for the Lunar New Year. This is tying in the snake with the World Trade Center and the Moonchild, you see? And I have that up here somewhere. A 150-foot long serpentine sculpture celebrates the year of the snake at World Trade Center Oculus, because in Chinese astrology or their system, it's the year of the wooden snake, 2025. And here you can see a picture of it. They just put this gigantic snake in the middle of the World Trade Center Oculus. And it's interesting because going back to the idea of Project Stargate, AI, and that whole thing, the eyes merging with the screen, this snake used CNC technology that revealed itself to viewers as they passed by it. They could also interact with it by scanning a QR code, which allowed them to move an animated overlay. So it was a technological snake as well. In addition to everything else that's going on here symbolically, they titled it Infinite Harmony. You know how they like to invert these kinds of things. I guess maybe from their perspective, this is some kind of infinite harmony that's taking place through this merger. But I think there was another picture of this somewhere down here. Yeah, that's a better view of it. They just blatantly put this snake in the middle of the World Trade Center in the year 2025 as it relates to Snake Eyes, the World Trade Center, the Millennium Hilton, and this Turning Point USA, the Charlie Kirk assassination, who had his funeral take place in a snake and had his actual assassination foreshadowed blatantly in the film Snake Eyes. You know, I can't help but laugh. I mean, it's not funny. It's like a defense mechanism. I don't even know what else to do other than laugh at it. So, I don't know, man. This stuff is just wild. At 4:20 into the film, two characters are standing in front of doors that have a twin tower outline design on them. I noted the time here because I couldn't get a clear image of it on my computer. It was much clearer in other places that I looked, but you'll just have to trust me that that's there. And Cage's character walks through the doors and then goes down an escalator chasing Cyrus, which primarily means sun, or phoenix here, in the context of this Charlie Kirk ritual. And it was interesting to me that Nicolas Cage's character went down an escalator in the context of the golden escalator that Donald Trump went down when he announced his presidency, and that whole thing I got into in the last video about what happened at the UN. But his character stops Cyrus at a fence with a danger high voltage sign that uses the same lightning bolt imagery as the Turning Point USA American Comeback Tour, which is obviously the tour that Charlie Kirk was assassinated on. This is the American comeback marketing with the lightning bolts where the eye is. And then this is that sign with the same lightning bolts. Danger. High voltage. In other words, this is a ritual that will be charged. If we're viewing it from the perspective of a warning given to the collective subconscious mind. Danger, high voltage, as it relates to the Charlie Kirk assassination. Nicolas Cage's character then spots Tyler and says, Neptune High Sea Devils. There's multiple references to sea devils throughout the film, and I'm sure that is symbolically meant to depict something or allude to something. It just nothing stuck out to me. Maybe you guys will have an idea on that you can add. But Neptune High is pretty blatant and obvious, so there's most likely a Neptune connection in some way. One thing I do know is that on July 4th, 2025, the same day as the Texas floods, which occurred at the intersection of the 2023 and 2024 eclipses, Neptune began its annual retrograde in the zodiac sign of Aries, a period that lasts until December 10th, 2025. So there was this action with Neptune on July 4th that shifted its movement in a different direction, and that's the direction it was in when Charlie Kirk was assassinated. Maybe there's something to that. I don't know. At 9 minutes into the film, 2 ringside photographers enter the scene, 9 and 10 or 9:10. The simultaneous line in the film is, "Come on, this is the kind of thing Godfathers do." This is that scene, and as it's shot, they are walking towards where these photographers are, so they slowly come into the scene, and the first 2 are 9:10, the day that Charlie Kirk is assassinated. It's the kind of thing that Godfathers do, right? Now, he's talking about Godfather to children, but the dual layered meaning there is this is what Godfathers do. This is what the Dons do, the people who are orchestrating all of this. Now, somebody who says that's a coincidence will say, well, yeah, it went down all the way to number 1. It followed all the way down from 10 to 1. It's like, well, that's a reach, I think, because the 9 and 10 feature prominently before the other numbers come in. It kind of lingers. So in the film, where Charles Kirkland is assassinated in the neck in the exact same way Charlie Kirk is, there's a 9:10 reference in addition to the September 19th, 10 p.m. time of the fight that's shot in a way on that billboard where you can't really tell if it's a 9 or a 0. It could be either. And that's the point. It doesn't matter because the mind registers that as a 0 anyway. It registers both possibilities. There are multiple references in the film to the 14,000 fight fans attending the fight. By quote-unquote coincidence, The Atlantic stated that Charlie Kirk had just exercised his considerable rhetorical talents in an opening address to 14,000 mostly young, wildly enthusiastic people from all over the country. The official statistics state that around 3,000 people attended the speech at UVU. So how could The Atlantic be so far off? That was my first question. Where did they get this 14,000 number? Well, now we know. They got this 14,000 number because it was referencing this Snake Eyes film, whether the person writing that article knew that or not. Then there's the Hurricane Jezebel, where the Jezebel website published an article stating that they paid some Etsy witches to curse Charlie Kirk. And that's in reference to the fact that the storm in Snake Eyes is referred to as Hurricane or Tropical Storm Jezebel. What are the odds that Jezebel, the publication, would have something so directly referencing a bad outcome for Charlie Kirk just days before he's actually killed in an assassination? And what are the odds that it would be the name of the storm in Snake Eyes, given everything else we know about it? So the fight is Tyler versus Ruiz, and Ruiz is Mexican. They show you this with a Mexican flag a couple different times. And this reminded me of May 17th when that Mexican Navy ship crashed into the Brooklyn Bridge in New York. And it was named after the last Aztec ruler, which is said to mean descending eagle, i.e. it's Eagle Pass. It's the whole thing with the Great American Eclipse and the controlled demolition of the United States of America, which was echoed by the destruction of the Francis Scott Key Bridge in Baltimore, right? The collapse symbolically of the Star-Spangled Banner. Then Jimmy Kimmel played a role in the Charlie Kirk thing in the aftermath with the whole free speech angle. And as it happens, he is going to be in Brooklyn for a week to do some shows, and they have this Jimmy Kimmel live imagery on the Brooklyn Bridge. In the context of that Mexican ship that crashed into the Brooklyn Bridge, which had this picture with the monolith imagery here. Whatever this building is, giving the illusion of that monolith hotel, the Millennium Hilton at Ground Zero, right? Again, tying this into that and the Snake Eyes. Carla Gugino plays Julia Costello in Snake Eyes. She wears a white dress and blonde wig and looks very similar to Erica Kirk at Charlie Kirk's funeral in Phoenix. This is Gugino, and then this is Erica Kirk, Charlie Kirk's wife. Again, what are the odds that this character who is directly involved in the assassination, she's sitting right next to Charles Kirkland when it happens, and gets splattered with his blood, and even gets shot herself, looks identical to Erica Kirk, down to what they're wearing. And I won't even spend the time in this video getting into her character, but man, that rabbit hole is deep. She is connected in ways that normal people are not, and I'll just leave it at that. Gugino also recently played Elizabeth Kirk in Heads of State. This is a film released in 2025, on July 2nd, where the plot involves an attempted assassination of the USA president. And Kirk, the character, is behind the attempt. Do you see that? Subconsciously, they associate Kirk with taking out the United States, altering it in some way, a turning point, if it had succeeded. And then, this one is just wild too. Allegedly, Dead Man on Campus was in the previews for the original VHS release of Snake Eyes. I say allegedly because I don't have the VHS, so I can't verify that. But this is the website where you can find it on. This is 1999 VHS version number 1. And they go through everything that is a preview before the film. And look at this one. It's The Truman Show, giving you that whole connection. And then, yeah, there's Dead Man on Campus. And of course, Charlie Kirk was a dead man on campus. He was assassinated at UVU, which is a college campus. And Utah Valley University is in Orem, Utah. And it just so happens that in some interpretations, Orem may derive from the Old English word orm, meaning serpent or dragon. And there again, you have the snake connection. So if you view Orem with that kind of etymology and that meaning, he was killed in a town named after a serpent. And then he was buried, quote unquote, in this ritual in a stadium that was intentionally designed to look like a snake. And his assassination is foreshadowed in Snake Eyes. So that's everything that I wanted to get into in terms of the film Snake Eyes. But going back to the beginning, the issue here is that this connection has very intentionally been allowed to go viral, to the point where Newsweek is very blatantly promoting these types of accounts that have no credibility. On Twitter, especially. Newsweek is promoting these accounts. They've done this at times in the past. They did a similar thing with the Back to the Future Predicts 9/11 video. That was very intentionally promoted so that you would go to the video and see synchromysticism in the description. And if you got curious, if you were one of the minority of the people who was exposed to that said, hey, this is kind of interesting, I want to learn more. Well, then you get sucked in to one of the portals they have set up for you in advance to mislead you and waste your time for years and years and years and never give you anything that's true or really matters. So they have all these portals set up that will send you into these dimensions online where you can get lost in disinformation. And they use things like this that are demonstrably true in the same way that Back to the Future and 9/11 is demonstrably true. And they use it kind of as a hook to get you sucked in to one of these larger worldviews that will ultimately mislead you and have you thinking incorrectly about what's going on in the world and your place within it. And then simultaneously, by promoting people who have no credibility, you achieve the goal of doing something like this, which is the majority of people look at some of the other things that these accounts are saying and they're like, oh man, these are crazy conspiracy theorists. I can't take anything they're saying seriously if they believe these other things. And that's the disinformation angle, right? So it's a complicated, nuanced thing, right? It's not as simple as just a soundbite. You know, you kind of have to really observe these things in a way that isn't so binary and rigid. But I am guilty of doing that sometimes because I see the YouTube channels and other accounts that are promoting this story, and I know they're shills, and I'm just sitting here thinking like, why are they allowing them to talk about this? This is so blatantly true. Why are they promoting this? Why is it being allowed? I don't want to turn this video into that and go through all the accounts and do that whole thing, even though I have all the screen grabs up. The one I'll just point you towards is this one from VidMax, which is a known disinformation outlet. There's big money behind VidMax. And the fact that they're promoting it and promoting the character they promoted on such a large platform like VidMax is very suspicious. So even after I went into everything I went into, which is clearly legitimate and clearly was intentionally done with knowledge of what was coming in terms of Charlie Kirk's assassination, you got to be careful with this stuff and see how they're using it, and then stay out of the conversation in the way that they're using it, so as to not be polluted by it. I mean, that's assuming your goal is to be taken seriously and actually show people the truth. If that's your goal, you gotta take a step back when these things happen and not rush in so you don't get lumped in with them. And that's why I took my time with this, so I could have a more holistic view of the situation when I talked about it. And I was hesitant to talk about it because this is going on. But I figured, might as well do it anyway. Life's short, why not? So I'll leave it there. Later.